We're taking a break from my usual longer form conversations with authors, comedians, and filmmakers about their stories for more coverage from South by Southwest 2023. For this, I go back to the red carpet for the premiere of American Born Chinese, a new action comedy series on Disney Plus based on the 2006 Gene Luen Yang graphic novel of the same name. American Born Chinese tells the story of Jin Wang, an average teenager juggling his high school social life with his home life. When he meets a new student on the first day of the school year, even more worlds collide as Jin is unwittingly entangled in a battle of Chinese mythical gods. Over the course of the next 10 minutes, you'll hear from 3 people in this order. The aforementioned Gene Luen Yang, who not only wrote the graphic novel but serves as an executive producer on the series, Ben Wang, who stars as Jin, and Daniel Wu, who plays the Monkey King. I hope you enjoy, starting with Gene Luen Yang. So what was the inspiration for creating this story to begin with?
It really is. I mean, even though it has a mythological element with gods and, kung fu fights, it really is based on my own childhood. So I grew up the son of Chinese immigrants. I went through a period of my life when I felt really, really uncomfortable in my own skin. And what the story is about is how I worked through that as a kid. That's what I hope the viewer will take away is, if one of the viewers feels like an outsider, I hope that they will also find a way to feel comfortable in their own skin.
I have an 8-year-old daughter right now who's a voracious reader, and she's really into gods of all ilk. So the typical for American kids, the Greek and Roman gods, but she's getting into Egyptian gods as well, and this deals with Chinese god mythology, if I'm not mistaken, correct? Okay, so I'm assuming, based on one of the other main characters in this story, that the Monkey King is your favorite Chinese god from back in the day?
He absolutely is, yeah.
What's so cool about the Monkey King?
Well, I first heard his stories when I was a kid from my mom at bedtime, and there's just a lot about him that I really loved. He is a monkey who knows kung fu and has superpowers. So that by itself, right, makes him cool. But even beyond that, I think there's something about him that embodies a certain kind of courage that I wanted when I was a kid. And I hope that's also something that comes through in the story.
I freaking love monkeys, so you've sold me even more on checking this series out. All right, last question now, because while the tide is turning, and we're all thankful for that, for a long time, Hollywood has had a problem with casting white actors in roles that should be reserved for those of other ethnic makeups. And of course, Asian characters are not exempt from that. So my last question for you is, what is the most glaring example of that from Hollywood history in your mind, based on 3 options? John Wayne as Genghis Khan, Mickey Rooney in Breakfast at Tiffany's, or David Carradine as, David Carradine?
Yeah, David Carradine is very egregious. All 3 of those examples. But I remember one of the things that happened that made me aware of it, of the issue, was the Avatar Last Airbender movie. I'm a huge fan of the TV series. It's very apparent in the TV series that even though it's a mythological fantasy world, it's based on real-world Asian cultures. And in the show notes of the original series, it specifies that all of the characters should have black or brown hair. They're all supposed to look either Asian or Inuit. And when they made that movie, they did not follow through with that. So for me as an Avatar fan, that was the most glaring example.
What do you love about the story being told in American Born Chinese?
I love everything about it. I love that it's basically unlike any other thing I've ever seen on TV. I love that it's the show that I really wish I had growing up. And I love all the people who are working on it. So I'm really happy about it.
And you play the main character in this show. That's obviously a really big deal for you. What was that moment like when you found out that you were starring in this incredible looking series?
It was pretty insane. I was shooting a movie in Connecticut, and I think I found out while I was in the public library. So I was like crying in the public. Sorry, I was crying in the Stanford Public Library. So that's what it was like.
The Stanford Public Library?
Yeah, the Stanford, Connecticut Public Library. Very nice library, nice carpets, very comfortable place to cry.
Do you remember a book or something that you were reading at the time in this library, or maybe a website that you were on?
Yes, I was reading the American-born Chinese graphic novel.
Oh my God.
Because I'd never read it. I grew up in Minnesota, so I never had access to this. I never knew about this material. No one told me about it until I got the audition, and so it was kind of a crazy couple of days for me.
Obviously, a media adaptation of whether it's a book or a graphic novel like what you were reading and what this series is based on, there's going to be certain liberties that have to be taken to advance storylines along, or maybe not pay as close attention to detail in certain things. But what is something about the graphic novel that you're glad that was kept in for the show that you're shooting?
Well, I think the graphic novel is such a intrinsically, it is of its medium, right? It's a great graphic novel that uses the conventions of a graphic novel to tell its story that in a way that only a graphic novel can tell it, right? And so I think when we're doing a TV, we could never have made a perfect one-to-one adaptation of the graphic novel, because only a graphic novel could be that graphic novel. I feel like I'm talking in circles. But for a TV show, I think one of the smartest things the writers and the showrunner and Kelvin and all those guys did was sort of take this idea, the themes of the graphic novel, and explore them in a way that uses the medium of television, that uses things that only TV does. In a way, like, for example, the character, this sort of racist caricature, cousin character from the graphic novel is translated into a problematic character in a sitcom, in a TV show. And that way we can show this TV show on TV and have that sort of direct interface between the audience and this material, and have them take a direct look at this problematic character in a way that the graphic novel couldn't. So in that way, it was sort of building on it.
Oh, that's very interesting, because I have not read the graphic novel myself, but I read about that particular component of it, and I wondered how that would translate today. So that's a very creative way to present that to the audience. All right, last question now. I'm a big Monkey fan, and I am smitten at the idea of the Monkey King. Just how freaking cool is the Monkey King?
He's basically Superman, but like with more powers. Like he's insane. Like, and it's also, this character is like, I can't explain to people who don't know how intrinsic this mythology is to people in East Asia and in China especially. The Monkey King is like as known, his story and this character is as known over there as like Peter Pan and Romeo and Juliet and like Jesus Christ. Like it's a religious element too, because it was part of a novel that was one part of sort of a religious text, a Buddhist text. And so it's deeply, deeply ingrained in the psyche. And so because of that, it's worked its way right into anime and into video games. And so I'm so excited for this TV show to sort of bring it to a more mainstream American audience and have them find out how cool this character is.
So you said the Monkey King has a Jesus-like quality as well?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, because he's as known. In a way that, like, in America, everybody knows Jesus, right? Everybody knows his story, even if you're not a Christian. You know about this person, and you know sort of the ups and downs of his story. Like that in China, I'm just trying to say that it's not like a literary character. It's more than that. It's a culturally ingrained part of our culture. So I'm very happy.
Well, if he has the Jesus factor, it sounds like he needs to move down to Austin and start a band here, because pretty much every lead singer I know is like that as well. But hey, thank you so much for the time today. Congratulations on this.
Yeah, thank you very much.
What is it that you love about the story being told in American-born Chinese?
I think, what I love about it is a very universal story, because it's about Ben Wang's character being an awkward high school student and trying to fit in and trying to find his identity. But on top of that, we get to see the kind of cultural background that he comes from and how it makes it even more complicated for him to fit in. And then on top of that, we get to introduce American audiences to Chinese mythology. So the character I play is the Monkey King, who is a very famous character all through Asian culture and history that almost every kid grew up with. And so to be able to introduce that character to a global audience or American audience is an awesome experience to do.
I'm a sucker for monkeys, so you didn't need to say much more than Monkey King, much less the kung fu abilities, the superhuman powers. Is there a favorite aspect or quality of the Monkey King that you especially enjoyed getting to play?
Well, he's a shapeshifter, but he's also a really good martial artist, and he has this really special magical staff that's like can be this small and he hides it behind his ear, but when he needs it, it can be humongous and can even be giant. So it depends on the situation. It can change different sizes, and so he uses it in all different ways. So we get to see that throughout the show.
Oh man, I can't freaking wait. All right, and while the tide is turning, and we're all thankful for this, for a long time Hollywood has had a problem with whether you call it yellow facing or whitewashing, unfortunately casting white actors in roles that belong to people of Asian descent. So my question for you is, what is the most glaring example of that based on 3 examples I'm going to give you now? 1, John Wayne as Genghis Khan. 2, Mickey Rooney, that embarrassing performance in Breakfast at Tiffany's. Or 3, David Carradine as David Carradine.
Well, the one that hits home to me the most is David Carradine, because I watched that show growing up, right? And I just never understood how this guy with taped eyes is playing someone like me on screen. I just never understood it. And I love the show because I love Shaolin Kung Fu and all that stuff, but that was one aspect that made it kind of cringy and like weird. And like I respect David Carradine as an actor and all that, and it really wasn't his choice. I knew originally this was supposed to be Bruce Lee's thing, right? And that was like kind of like what was angering to me about it was like Bruce Lee was the guy who created that idea, and he wasn't allowed to play the character because they thought that America wasn't ready to see a Chinese on screen at the time. So to see where we are now, like 30, 40 years later, and that we're able to do a show like this on Disney Plus is amazing. It shows that we've taken many, many steps forward in terms of our identity and who we are as Americans, because we aren't just white, you know, we are a plethora of different cultures and backgrounds, and that's what makes this country great. And to see us represented on screen in all those different forms is what this country is all about.
Fantastic answer there. Thank you for that. Last question. This is more of a general South by Southwest question, because every year this festival operates on themes, and one of the themes this year is the continued convergence of humans and technology, which I think if we're getting it right, we perhaps get to live in a world that's somewhat similar to the Jetsons, but if it goes horribly wrong, this whole thing turns into Terminator 2. That's not good for anybody. Yes. So in that hypothetical worst case scenario, which side of that war are you on? Team human or team robot?
I think I'm on team human for sure. I'm heading to the hills and building a fort up there to protect myself from the AI out there.
See, I was team human until 3 years ago, and then I saw it took 2 months to a global pandemic for us to all turn on one another. We maybe have 4 to 6 months tops before we eat ourselves and the robots win that one.
Right. So the robots may not even have to do anything, you know? They just watch us kill ourselves.
Just send out a couple of political tweets, and then everybody's done for.
It all dissolved, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, hey, thank you so much for the time today. Congrats on it.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
Thanks to Gentleman Jesus for the intro and outro music. Hear more of his work at gentlemanjesus.com. Thanks to you for hanging out. For more of the show and to connect on social media, visit booksonpod.com. We'll talk to you next time on Books on Pod.